For this lesson today, we're going to practice subtracting integers. So it's important to understand that subtraction means to add the opposite. So subtraction means to add the opposite. Let's briefly review our addition rules for integers. If I am adding integers with the same sign, we learned this yesterday, so both of these numbers are negative, I'm going to add the numbers together, 2 plus 3 is 5, and keep the sign. That's how I add integers with the same sign. I add and keep. If I'm adding integers with different signs, so say negative 2 plus 3, this number is negative, my 3 is positive. So I'm going to subtract and then keep the sign of the bigger number. So my larger number is 3 if I ignore the signs. 3 minus 2 is 1. My larger number is positive, so my answer is positive 1. But I don't have to write the positive sign. So again, if you're adding integers with the same sign, you add and keep. You add and keep the sign both the numbers share. If you're adding numbers with different signs, you're going to subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. Just as a side note, remember your rules for adding and subtracting are completely different than multiplying and dividing, okay? When you're multiplying and dividing integers, whenever you multiply or divide the same two numbers with the same sign, you'll get a positive. Whenever you multiply or divide two numbers with different signs, you'll get a negative. So again, adding and subtracting are completely independent rules. So now that we've had our review with how to add integers, we're going to practice some problems with subtraction or a minus sign. So let's try a few. I've got negative 26 minus 32. Now in this case, because I'm subtracting, I need to remember that subtraction is adding the opposite. So I'm just going to rewrite this problem as addition. So negative 26, I always keep my first number. Subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. So because I'm subtracting a positive 32, subtraction means to add the opposite, so I'm going to add a negative 32. So I'm adding, changing my subtraction to addition, the opposite, changing my positive 32 to a negative 32. Now I have a subtraction problem. 26 plus 32 is 58. I'm adding two numbers with the same sign, so I'm going to be keeping the sign that both my numbers share, which is a negative. So my answer is negative 58. Let's try another one. Let's try negative 18 minus 54. Okay, so again, this is subtraction. Negative 18 minus a positive 54. Remember that if there is subtraction and just a number, that's the same as subtracting a positive number. So negative 18 minus positive 54. So subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. So I'm going to keep my negative 18. Remember that I am adding the opposite of a positive 54, which is a negative 54. This is a method we can use to change all subtraction problems to addition problems, because subtraction is the same as adding the opposite, and then we can use our addition rules. Okay, so I'm adding two numbers with the same sign. 18 and 54 are both negative. And I get 72. Since I added numbers with the same sign and they're both negative, my answer is going to be negative 72. I'll add and keep. All right, let's try just a couple more. 15 minus negative 40. Now, these are the problems where you really need to be careful. We're subtracting a negative. And remember that subtraction means that we are adding the opposite. So I'm going to rewrite this problem with addition. So keep my 15, and then I'm going to add my opposite. I'm subtracting a negative 40, so I'm going to add the opposite of negative 40. So that's going to become a plus. What is the opposite of a negative 40? Well, it's just a positive 40. So just to make sure we're understanding, subtraction, again, is the same as adding the opposite. We're going to just drill that in. It's really important we understand that. Keep my 15. My subtraction is the same as adding the opposite of negative 40, which is positive 40. And 40 plus 15 is a positive 55. All right, let's try another one. 9 minus 30. So again, 9 minus 30, we need to think of adding the opposite. Another way we can think of this is with money, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Here I have subtraction. 9 minus a positive 30 is really this problem. They just haven't written that positive side next to that 30. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my 9, change my minus to plus, because subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. There you go. And the opposite of positive 30 is negative 30. So 9 minus 30 is the same as 9 plus a negative 30. I'm adding now numbers with different signs, so I'm going to follow my rule of subtracting and keeping the sign of the bigger number. So I'm going to subtract 30 minus 9, which is 21. My larger number is negative, so my answer is negative 21. Now, the way that we could think of this with money is, say that you have $9 in your bank account, but you take away $30. You didn't have $30 to take away. So basically now you're in debt by $21. So you would owe $21 to the bank. All right, last one we're going to do with practicing just subtracting integers. We're going to do negative 30 minus 2. Again, whenever you see subtraction, we need to think add the opposite. So keep my negative 30, and then I'm going to add the opposite of positive 2, which is negative 2. I'm adding integers with the same sign, so I'll add them together, keep the sign. All right, we're going to try a problem where you will need to use this on your homework tonight. So we're going to find the distance between -1 and -20 on the number line. So this is a question I'm going to ask that you try with me on your notes, and then we can try this on our homework later. So what I want you to do is just draw a number line and give us your 0 somewhere in the middle. And we're finding the distance between -1 and -20. So -1 will be about right here. Negative 20 would probably be somewhere much lower, but we'll just say that it's right here. It's not drawn to scale, so keep that in mind. So what is the distance between negative 1 and negative 20? Well, if I'm at negative 1, I would need to go 19 spaces further to get to 20. So this would be 19 spaces between negative 1 and negative 20. Let's try one more. What is the distance between negative 4 and positive 5 on the number line? So again, I've got my number line, 0. Negative 4 is 4 spaces below 0. Positive 5 is 5 spaces above 0. So what is the distance between these two numbers? Well, 4 to 0 is 4 spaces. And 0 to 5 is 5 spaces. So my total amount of space is 4 plus 5, or 9. So the amount of distance between my integers on the number line is 9 units. All right, that is all for today. Please go ahead and use your notes from this lesson to do your assignment. Remember, we learned that subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. And we also worked on finding the distance between integers on a number line.